is HiveMeet. I'm Andrew Wooden and we're streaming live to YouTube. Our audience is growing and we're seeking input from you. HiveMeet's designed for you, so we need to know what you need to know. There's a link to a survey below the video screen on YouTube there, but don't fill it in now. We don't want you to be distracted. You need to concentrate on tonight's show. After the show, perhaps you'd fill it in for us. Thank you. Once again, we're live, so we've got questions and answers that we can bring into the show. So please use the chat box on the right and we'll be able to bring them into the conversation. Now, I'm going to introduce my co-host. That's Tino Corsetti, who's the VAA's Super Secretary. Hi, Tino. Over to you.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks very much. So we'll take a look at the heat map for Victoria. It's still showing 3 clusters of detections. Varroa is coming to a hive near you very soon. So let's support each other and let's get ready. And that's what HiveMeet is all about. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsors, BeeQual and BeeTrace, which are independently developed and audited food safety programs. We recommend that all beekeepers visit the BeeQual and BeeTrace websites and consider signing up. And there are special offers for first-time signups for BeeTrace. Now, Andrew, back to you.
Okay, our guest today is Matt Peterson, who's from Dividing Creek Apiaries in Gippsland. Matt's just joined the VAA board and he's an innovative commercial beekeeper. He's spent a number of study tours of Europe and he's just got back from one to Greece where he's been focusing on looking at Varroa treatments. So Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Tino, and thanks, Andrew. Now, we're going to start this presentation with this beautiful picture here. This is Vikos Gorge in northern Greece, and it's at around 2,800 metres above sea level. It's in a northern region known as West Macedonia, near the border with Albania. Now, in 2007, in Australia, we had the incursion of Apis cerana, and it was sheer luck it arrived Varroa-free, but it did open my eyes to our vulnerability to incursions. Now, being raised on a family farm, I was always told when it comes to pest and disease that it's easier to anticipate and prevent than to look for the cure. So since 2008 until now, I've been very lucky to be able to travel through Scandinavia and a lot of Europe, Japan and New Zealand. And in those early times, around 2012, despite treatments working, global losses averaged 30 to 40% in most regions around the world, with the exception of Greece. And I always questioned why and what were they doing in Greece that was so different to the rest of the world. Now, like I say, most of us are familiar with this pyramid now, thanks to our T2M workshops. And it's really easy to just go straight to the top, to the treatments, without thinking of the cost of skipping cultural IPM. Clearly, treatments kill mites, but on their own, they're not sustainable when it comes to honeybee and pollinator health as a whole. And I've made this presentation to show how Greece has implemented cultural IPM strategies and been able to maintain increasing high domestic demand for their honey and sustained a thriving, growing beekeeping industry. So we'll go back to the first slide here, and I've called it Aristeus' secret. Now, Aristeus is a Greek god of beekeeping and agriculture in Greek mythology. And Aristeus is said to have been raised in a cave by bees, hence the name Nectar of the Gods. Now, Greek mythology, along with a long history of beekeeping, has laid the foundation of value of honeybees and pollinators within Greek culture. beekeeping first came to Greece as far back as 1500 BC. And here we can see in the top right-hand corner some 17th century stone beehives on the island of Lefkada in western Greece. And in the bottom right-hand corner there, these are some photos I took of some beehives in the museum in Athens from 850 BC. So they have a really long history with beekeeping. Now, in ancient Greece, bees and their honey were highly valued, symbolising knowledge, health, power, and immortality. The famous uh, Aristotle, Aristotle was considered a pioneer in scientific beekeeping, and his work laid the foundations for modern day scientific inquiry. Even in Bronze Age Greece, honey and wax were valuable commodities, and the practice of apiculture was recognised as a specialist profession. So highly valued that the penalty for stealing a beehive, even way back then, was comparable to the fine for stealing a sheep. Now, for those who don't know where Greece is situated in the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. And on its west coast is the Ionian Sea, and on the eastern side, the Aegean Sea. It's bounded in the north by Albania, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria, and in the east by Turkey. We share many things with Greece. Greece is roughly the size of Victoria. There's a very similar Mediterranean climate with really hot summers, cool to mild winters. It has a large amount of coastal zones, mountain zones, which we'll see here on the next slide. Mountain zones, fertile valleys and plains, and many arid areas, very similar to Victoria. I liken it to this map of Victoria, and I say that Greece has the terrain of the east. It's largely uncultivated. Around 70% of Greece is uncultivated. It has really high resources to natural areas, but it has a really hot, dry climate of Western Victoria. It's ideal for beekeeping in reality. A few fun facts about Greece. Being in Europe, Apis mellifera is native to Greece, and they have their own subspecies called Cecropia. Now, in the most recent survey, Greece has the highest density of managed beehives on the planet at around 2.2 million, and it works out 17 beehives per square kilometre, and being mostly commercial beekeepers, it's around 90 beehives per beekeeper. So in my time from 2012 and 13 to now, currently, they've increased from around 1.2 million beehives to about 2.2 million. So it just shows you how their industry is thriving. Because of that culture, they don't eat much sugar in Greece, and they sweeten everything with honey. They're one of the largest domestic consumers of honey on the planet, at around 2.5 kilos per person, where the world average is about 250 grams. 70%, like I said, 70% of Greece is uncultivated, and it's 100% GMO free within all their crops. They produce around 1 million tonnes of peaches, and they're the world's largest producer of canned peaches. Around 1.4 million tonnes of citrus. They're the fourth largest producer of kiwi fruit on the planet, and they produce around 25% more fruit than Australia. And one interesting thing that people might not realise, but they produce 80% of Europe's production of cotton. Now, before Varroa, and particularly agricultural chemicals, life as a beekeeper, like most of the world, in Greece was bliss. healthy soils, enormous biodiversity, clean air and water, large forage and nutrition availability. And like here in Australia, they have a migratory beekeeping industry, and they enjoyed around 80 to 100 kilos per hive of honey yields. So I'll just touch base on the industrial, agricultural and chemical revolution, which most of the world saw, in the 40s, 50s and 60s. And Greece was no exception to this, and probably similar to what we've seen in Australia prior to Varroa. We saw the first obvious impacts on pollinators and stresses to the honeybees, and the first signs, really, as I like to call it, of the leaky boat. Now, Varroa arrived in the 1970s, and its impact was immediate. The mites arrived with viruses, and they suffered heavy losses in the first couple of years until they got their head around the treatments. I believe it was about 1974 it arrived, and in the first year they lost 50% of all their managed beehives. But they quickly turned this around through advice from countries like Korea and Japan. There were no registered chemical treatments at that time, and they quickly went straight to agricultural chemicals, and in particular fluvalinate, which later became registered as Apistan. Because the chemical use in industrial agriculture was already having an impact, the holes in that leaky boat were becoming quite hard to stop. Now, the 1980s to 2010 saw, because of the destruction really of that biodiversity around agriculture, saw declines in crop yields around agriculture, and because of their availability to all these natural resources, beekeepers avoided agriculture basically and the chemicals thanks to government and industry policies, which allowed access to Greece's vast natural floral resources. There were limited availability to treatment options, and there was large overuse of single chem classes, especially that chem class with fluvalinate, or as we know it, Apistan and Varroa. And because these are quite lipophilic or attracted to fats, i.e. beeswax, synergistic toxicity started to become issues around agriculture when mixed with agricultural chemicals and fungicides. Now, in this next slide, I've thrown this in here just to give you an idea of the difference. So in all those photos in Greece, you would have always seen in the background some sort of natural resources very close to agriculture, and it was really their saving grace. While the rest of the world, particularly here in America, in this photo, you can see this is in North Dakota. There used to be grass and flowers growing here in this field, but now, since everything with GMO is Roundup ready, the whole fields are just sprayed, and anything that's not supposed to be growing there, anything that's not corn or soybeans, which is mostly grown for biofuels, anything else is dead. And because there's no availability to natural chemical-free nutrition for honeybees and other pollinators, it really is no surprise that the USA has gone from 6 million beehives in the 1960s to currently struggling to maintain 2.8 million. It's always, we all know as beekeepers, we see this constantly on our news feeds. And this just another pretty, high impact photo here to show you where they just spray whole fields. They could never do this in Greece because they don't have GMO. They would have also killed their crops. So it's been their saving grace. But everything changed in 2004. Due to their economic crisis, the Olympics brought great celebration, but the government also imported hundreds of thousands of palm trees from North Africa and Asia. And along with that came an invasive species called the red palm weevil. It had the potential to decimate Greece's really rare palm species. and the government started what turned out to be a successful eradication attempt. But that involved the blanket use of pesticides and neonicotinoids. And even Greek beekeepers couldn't avoid the chemicals in the mountains. And in 2009 and 10 saw 40 to 50% losses in managed beehives, enormous decreases in agriculture and horticultural production. And the reality was that leaky boat was starting to sink. Since then, the Greek beekeeping industry made a lot of noise, and along with assistance from government, they stopped all herbicide use in unproductive areas. For example, roadsides, in agriculture, in parks and school grounds, and in gardens. And it's even illegal in Greece to mow your lawn during a flowering period to stop any impact on pollinators. This also includes in horticulture. Now, in around 2012, Greece banned neonicotinoids without permit, despite protests from farmers. Now, I'm not sure if the listeners realise, but neonicotinoids are mostly sublethal to bees. But at that time, the Greeks already knew that, particularly the neonicotinoid Cophiodidin, I think it's called, was suppressing larvae immune systems, which led to Varroa foundresses raising more daughters to maturity, which increased Varroa populations and brood diseases because larvae were less able to fight off Varroa. So thanks to these bans, and in 2013, Europe also, over the entirety of Europe, put in restrictions for these neonicotinoids. On the cotton crops, they only allowed pelletinized fipronil to stop spray drift, and there were heavy restrictions placed on any aerial pesticide applications. In 2018, there was a total ban of neonicotinoids in all of Europe. Now in Greece, there was a majority of organic treatments and a real focus on nutritional change on the honeybees at this time. And by 2012 and 13, the only synthetic uh, treatment that was working was Amitraz. And the turnaround was almost immediate. Insect biodiversity returned, crop yields and quality increased, and honeybee losses went back to pre-Varroa percentages of 5 to 10% per year. And here's just some photos I took last year. So the one on the left there is on the Vedia plain. This is under all the stone fruit, under all the peach trees. You can see where they're not spraying out with herbicide, just allowing huge nutritional resources for the honeybees. And on the right is all kiwi fruit. We'll just flick through some of these. It's just breathtaking when you go there and see all these wildflowers, and the honeybees just thriving. So this year, I went to Greece just in April, just recently, only to find the Greek industry thriving. The, there's bees everywhere. They're maintaining a really high wholesale price for their honey, and that's due to domestic demand. Greeks only consume Greek honey. Around 90% of all the honey they produce is consumed domestically, and it's almost shameful in Greece to consume anything but Greek honey. They've, their crop yields are increasing, high profits in horticulture from free pollination. They don't pay for pollination. They have no need to. There's so many bees, and the biodiversity within the pollinators is so high now. So these are just some more photos of my travels around Greece. Some of these are at sea level. Some of these are the bottom right hand corner there is at 2,900 metres. I'm on Mount Olympus. This is Christoph. This is on the east coast area called the Pelion Peninsula. Christoph only treats with organic treatments because there's a high resistance to amatraz now on the eastern side of the mountains, and he avoids agricultural areas at all costs. He runs around 500 beehives, and just like everyone else, he's producing around 30 to 40 kilos per hive per year now. And it's simply due to the fact that he focuses on chemical-free nutrition before and after honey flows to build big fat bodies in their bees to produce better immune systems to fight viral loads from Varroa. And to fill that honey void, they've all increased their hive numbers. So they're moving them less, focus on nutrition, and less production per hive means breeding less mites. Now, these guys are very good friends of mine. This is George and his brother Nikos. And I spent many days with these guys splitting hives and these guys teaching me all about organic treatments. Now, they run around 2,500 beehives. They mainly treat organically, but on the western side of the mountains, amatraz is still working around 70% efficacy, they believe. So they only treat in the winter with amatraz. And same thing, they all focus on chemical-free nutrition before and after honey flows. And these guys are 5 to 10% losses annually. Anything above that, they're looking for an issue generally within agriculture or some other impact. They're not focusing on Varroa as the impact anymore. They have it really dialed in. So there's just a few more photos of this trip. And the last slide here, basically the moral of the story is sustainable management of Varroa is possible. Despite chemical use worldwide, the standout difference in Greece is cultural IPM. And in order to implement this, it takes efforts from government, agriculture, horticulture, apiarists, and public cultural change. The benefits include healthy, sustainable, and profitable food production, including honey, thriving pollinator biodiversity. And while we have the opportunity to not have resistance within any of our treatments, we really need to focus on rotating our chemical classes to slow or stop any resistance in the future. So that's it, guys. I think I'm good to go for any questions, and I hope that was okay.
Thank you very much, Matt. That was fascinating, and I'm booking my flight to Greece right now. We've had some questions coming in, so Tino, perhaps you'd like to bring the first one on.
Yeah, are there national or regional beekeeping organizations in Greece advocating for, some of the apiculture best practices that you've been talking about?
There is, and this has sort of put me on the spot a little bit, but they have a large university and tertiary sector within Greece that really only directs its efforts into beekeeping, and then they direct that to government through their associations as well. So that they're really well set up with their connection to government, and having had these impacts early and learning from it and really being able to focus on what's caused it, they've been able to make really sustainable change. So yeah, there's a lot to learn, especially given the beekeepers access to resources. It's a really important thing that I think we need to focus on. Yeah, we have these opportunities here to do this.
Okay, here's a question from Anth Fox. Do many beekeepers in Greece practice chemical-free treatments?
I'm going to say no, but I would say most are now 100% organic chemical treatments only. So oxalic acid, formic acid, and thymol products. So they have the same registered base chemicals as Australia, but because they've been in the game so long, they have a lot more products within those organic chemical classes. But treatment-free, entirely no. But organic, yes, mostly organic. Yep.
You talked about all your international travel. Are there one or two key changes you've made to your beekeeping practice based on things that you've learned, both in Greece and some of the other countries you travel to?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I'm in the good position of I'm a farmer as well, so I've quite a bit of acreage, and so I can make changes within my farm and my farm's IPM strategies in regards to exposure to chemicals to my honeybees. So I've made huge efforts within my farm in that area. I move my bees a lot less now, to be honest. Yeah, and I've really put a focus into learning about the organic side of treatments and how to make efficacy of those treatments better. I think so. When Varroa does hit me, I'll be ready and really be able to put these IPM strategies in place and keep them forever without any fear of resistance. I think, yeah, that's a whole nother segment. The whole organic side of it, it's a real skill set, and I think it's something that we need to really push for extension education in this area. Yeah, it's a whole new skill set, the organic side. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question from Keith Padbury. What does pelletized fipronil mean? Is that pelletized or pelletized? I'm not sure that I know the answer to that.
It's pelletized. So traditionally, look, GMO crops with cotton has its benefits. Greece is not GMO, but like Australia, the GMO, and that GMO has made those crops more resistant to insects. But they are also Roundup and other chemical applications that they're resistant to those. So that means they can broadly spray out of an aeroplane those liquid general applications. And in Greece, they have banned application of liquid fipronil out of an aeroplane, totally avoided any drift. And the fipronil goes as a pellet in a solid state on the ground. So it's more about avoiding drift onto outside plants or nutritional sources. So those non-productive areas stay chemical free. So bees have access to nutrition outside of those crops. That's the main idea of it.
So we've got someone asking about your research trips. How do you go about planning your research trips, and how do you connect with beekeepers in other countries?
Well, Greece, Greece is an easy one for me because my wife is Greek, so that helps with the language barrier. B, I buy, and those who know me know that I use Technoset beehives, and they're produced in Greece. So those photos with George, George's wife is the owner of Technoset. So that's my connection with those guys. But Greece in general, if anybody wants to go to Greece, there are literally beehives everywhere. If you drive into an area where there is a pollen or a honey source, you will see beehives. I think there was one stretch this year on the Palaeon Peninsula. We went past about 20 loads of bees in like a 15-minute stretch, and you just pull over on the side of the road. Eventually, you'll find the owner of those hives, and they love Australians. They're very, very happy people, and they love Australians. They're always there to help. So I don't necessarily organise to connect with people. And in Japan, I did it through social media, to be honest. Japan was an interesting one because they had Apis cerana as a native species, and yet because they swarm and don't produce much honey, they were trying to manage Varroa on mellifera, and it's a very small industry, but most Japanese can speak English. So yeah, I found them through social media. So that's how I do it. Yep.
Sorry, I got distracted there. Have you seen the heat box being used for Varroa treatment in Greece or here in Australia, I guess?
I've seen it here in Australia, not in Greece. There was one other thing I forgot. In Greece, they cage queens as well, a little bit like in Italy. They cage queens to create brood breaks. But the heat box, no, not so much used in Greece. I think if you're a small guy, say 1 to 5 hives, I could see that working. But while the frames are in those heat boxes, I know they work very well on killing the Varroa within the frames. But I need to ask someone who uses those, what do they do about the mites and the bees they've left in the boxes? It's a question. Back in the beehive, they shake the bees off. I don't understand that side of it, but yeah.
I think you've got to treat them with oxalic acid vaporization or something like that at the same time to catch the ferretic mites.
Yeah, I don't think it can be an entirely treatment-free operation, but I know they work very well. Yeah.
So we've got a question about increasing nutrition of the bees. What's your strategy? Is it a combination of mixture and timing? And do you have any problems with small hive beetle?
I'm just going to assume this is a Greece question. Will we go with that? The last question about hive beetle is a good one because in Greece they don't have hive beetle, and it's a little bit back to that. It's much easier to anticipate saying and prevent than the cure. So the Greeks have put in enormous efforts to keep hive beetle out. They're more scared, believe it or not, of hive beetle than Tropicolaps, and Tropicolaps is literally on the Turkish and Georgian border, and they're not particularly worried about Tropicolaps because they're so good at using formic acid that it doesn't scare them, whereas hive beetle they know nothing about. They're very scared of it. Now, in regards to their method for increasing nutrition, well, that's all come assisted from government and their industry. They are literally, there are flowers everywhere. They don't spray herbicide in any unproductive area. So literally outside of under that foliage of a horticultural crop, or even 30 centimeters outside of an agricultural crop, there are flowers everywhere, and that's how they do it. They'll move to a pollen source before a honey flow. They'll do the honey flow, which they consider a stressful period for the honeybees, and then they'll move them back onto a honey flow. Onto a pollen flow. Yeah, to bring those fat bodies up in their honeybees and to build their immune system against the Varroa, because the Varroa is what's sucking those fat bodies dry, basically.
Well, look, Matt, that's been fantastic. Thank you very much, Matt. Perhaps I could just ask one more last question, which is about the honey that they get there in Greece. I understand they get a lot of honeydew honey. Have you tasted that, and can you recommend it?
Yep, that could have been a whole another 10 minutes, to be honest. So around 90% of the honey they produce is honeydews from, and those who don't know what a honeydew is, it's basically a scale insect, say on pine trees and fir trees. It sucks on the sap of the pine tree and it secretes honeydew. And then the bees literally suck that up and produce honey from that. So that's around 90% of the honey they produce. Other than that, they produce a lot of heather honey, chestnut honey, obviously just general ground flora or field honeys. And their biggest and most popular honey and most famous honey is their thyme honey. They have wild thyme in Greece. It is absolutely magnificent honey, I must say. And most Australians won't like me saying this, but I would say thyme honey is the best honey, honestly, almost on the planet. But Greece, because of its soil types, its climate, it has extremely high antibacterial content, higher than Manuka. And they've won many, many gold awards, Greek honey, at the London Honey Show, for example, which is pretty famous. So, yeah, good question, Andrew. And that's a whole other segment on its own, Greek honey. It's, it's pretty good.
Well,
Yep.
thank you very much. I think we better move on now because times are passing. So over to...
Yeah, so every Hive Meet, we like to do a bit of an update on VAA and what we're up to. And I'm really delighted to introduce Lachlan Good, who is one of our new board members. And he's going to take you through some of the things that we're working on. Over to you, Lachlan.
Hi, Tino. Thanks for that great presentation, Matt. It's it's very interesting, all that touring you've done. But I guess I'm here to give you guys a bit of an update as to what the VAA has been up to. And as Tino said, I'm new to the executive this year, and very excited to come on board. And so I guess I just wanted to wrap up quickly the conference this year. Unfortunately, fortunately, I just had a brand new baby, my wife and I missed the conference by a couple of days. So it was a bit of a bugger. But from all reports, it all went off without a hitch with record attendance, huge amount of trade stalls, and great reports generally. But Andrew's been doing a great job with the release of the presentations and the key speakers from the each of the day's events. And the most recent one he's put out has been Cameron Jack, which is great. It's on YouTube, and if you want to go and have a look, feel free to go for it. But I guess I just wanted to introduce the new board. We've got Lindsay Callaway as the president, Andrew Woot and Ben Moore as the vice, and then the rest of the board members are as follows: Richard Collins, Millie, myself, Olivia, Matt Peterson, who you've all met, and Tony Willsmore. The VAA has got a number of subcommittees this year that we'll be covering these sort of topics, and I guess we're here to try and support all the beekeepers about, and hopefully some of these subcommittees have the issues that matter to you, and we'll be able to put our best foot forward in doing something for you guys. The next thing that's really important, I guess, in the VA this year is the Melbourne Royal Show. This year, it's held 25th of September to the 5th of October, and it is one of the largest fundraising events for the VAA each year. We're going to have things like bee cage demos with live bees and hive inspections. There'll be honey tasting and sales of our wonderful Victorian honey, and that's, I guess, really important to talk about here at the moment, because that's a bit of an example of what it'll look like there. But the honey this year is coming direct from our beekeepers in Victoria, and that's our great VA logo that we've had put together to show some of the unique monofloral honeys that we'll have for sale here. Like this is one here showing the giant mallee from northwestern Victoria, and some messmate honey that'll be for sale, and a lot of that honey is donated. So if you guys wanted to get involved, you can become a donor to the VAA for the Royal Melbourne Show fundraising, and there's a couple of levels there of the donor program that you can work towards, whether that's donating bulk honey that will be packed under that label to be sold at the Royal Melbourne Show to go towards the VAA, or whether it's, if you've got a certified packing facility, you might be able to pack some honey on behalf of us, or even we're happy to buy honey at a wholesale rate to sell again at the Melbourne Show. But let us know if you'd like to participate by the Friday, the 18th of July, because we need to get it all rolling along. But
Thank you very much, Lachlan. That's great. Looking forward to the new board, and it's very exciting what we're doing. Now, next month, we've got Mark Goodwin from New Zealand speaking. He's the author of one of the authors of the Control of Varroa book, which should be on everybody's bookcase. It's a fantastic Bible for treating Varroa. Mark has been doing research on beekeeping for 30 years plus, and he's the author of at least 6 books and multiple academic papers. So it's going to be really interesting to hear from him. Thanks everyone for participating in HiveMeet, especially to Matt for your valuable insights into what's going on in Greece. Despite being a self-declared influencer, nobody's sending me any free stuff, and I've even had to pay for this shirt myself. But the VAA is about to launch a range of branded merch with these attractive logos on them, and it'll be on the website in the next week or so. So get ready to buy some of these goods. HiveMeet supports Victoria's beekeepers as we get used to beekeeping with Varroa. And please don't forget to fill in the survey that we're doing. And see you next month. Thank you very much.